Today I'm showing how to make classic raspberry pie. It really is quite easy to do. Hi, I'm Shelly from Frugal Family Home, where I create quick tutorials to help build your cooking and baking confidence. So let's get started and I'll show you how quick and easy it really is to make classic raspberry pie. Okay, first we need to make our double pie crust. To our bowl we're going to add 2 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 2/3 a cup of shortening. And then we need to cut in the shortening, so I'm just going to use my fingers because I find it so much easier. What I do is I just pick it up and drop it. Pick up the pieces of fat and drop them down. And that's all I'm doing over and over and over again until I get very small pieces of fat mixed in with the flour. If you're going to use butter, you want to cut it in and then you'll want to shape it into a disc and you'll want to refrigerate it for at least an hour. I like shortening because my family needs to eat dairy free. You can get non-hydrogenated shortening also. Now we have our pieces and they're about the size of peas. Ready to add our water now. And we're just going to add a tablespoon or 2 at a time. And then we're going to use a fork to mix it in. And you're just kind of going, you don't want to over mix, so you just want to keep dragging the fork through, stirring it gently, and as it looks like no other bits are coming together, then you'll add a little more water. So see here in the middle, it's wet and it's starting to clump up some, but out on the edge here it's very dry. So we're going to add a little more water out on the edge there, and we're going to stir again very gently. We're just trying to get all of the dough to come together. And again over here, it's a little bit dry, but everything else is pretty moistened, so we'll just put a little more water there where it's dry and give it another stir. You don't want to be afraid of adding water or adding flour. If it seems too wet, you need to add some flour, and if it's too dry, you need to add more water. And you don't want to try to roll out a dough that is too dry or too wet. It'll just be a nightmare for you. Added just a little bit more water and I'm stirring it again, and as soon as all of it looks moist, and now it looks like it's very nice and moist to me, as soon as I think I have the right consistency, then I bring it together into a ball and see if I can bring it all together. And I can. It's a little bit tacky, but it's not too wet. I'll just use a little flour on the board. So now let's take our dough ball to the board. We have our dough on the board here, and we're just going to cut it a little bit off center, just a little less than half on one side. Now the smaller piece we're just going to set aside over here, and we'll use it in a minute to do the upper crust. And for the lower crust, we're just going to roll out this other piece here. Now the main thing to remember when you're rolling out your dough or your pie crust is you want to roll away from you. And you're going to turn and away and turn, and you're just going to keep doing that. And then as you see it's sticking just a little bit to my rolling pin, I'm going to put a little flour on each side. You want to keep it floured and just keep rolling and turning, and you'll just keep rolling and going around until your crust size is about 1 inch beyond your pie plate. And now it looks like our pie dough is rolled out and is big enough now, so we're going to test it to see. We're just going to take our pie plate and turn it upside down, and if it looks like there's 1 inch all the way around, then we're ready to add it to our pie plate. Now that we know our pie crust is the right size for a pie plate, we're going to pick up our pie crust. And I found the easiest way is to roll it upon your rolling pin turn your pie plate over and then just unroll it on top. And you just want to push it into the pie plate. Try not to stretch it, but just kind of work it down into the pie plate all the way around. And the reason why you don't want to stretch it is if you stretch it, it will shrink, and we want it to keep its shape and size. So now I've went all the way around. It's fitted really nice. Let's trim the edges. You don't need all this extra pie dough hanging off. So just take a knife and go along the edge. Don't want to cut it too tight, but you need to remove the extra pie crust on the edge because we're going to put a second crust on top, and we don't want the edge to be too thick. Now, if I was making a pastry crust, I have a video for that too. That is just a single pie crust. I wouldn't be cutting this off. I would be rolling it under. But because this is going to be a double pie crust, we're going to take this portion off and remove it. And now let's get our filling ready to add. To our bowl, we're going to add a cup of sugar, 4 tablespoons of cornstarch, and a half a teaspoon of cinnamon or nutmeg, whatever you prefer. And then we're just going to use a spatula to mix the sugar, cornstarch, and the nutmeg or cinnamon. And that way it'll be all incorporated well before we put the berries in, because the raspberries are very easy to break apart, and we want to have to stir them as little as possible to get it mixed in. And now we're going to add 5 cups of fresh raspberries. We don't want to break up our berries, so we just want to toss our raspberries in here and try not to break them up. Once you got everything pretty well moistened, you're good to go. And it's time to put it into our pie crust. And just gently place our berries with our sugar into our pie crust. And now we just have to roll out our second crust and put it over top. Okay, so our berries are in our pie crust. We've got our second pie crust, and again, we're just going to roll it on top, just kind of center it on there. This time, instead of cutting the edges, what we're going to do is we're going to fold the edge under the lower pie crust and seal it up. It'll make a nice thick edge, and so it'll bake up nicely, and it'll seal all of those juices inside too. So now they're all tucked in. Now we're going to make the edge of the pie look a little prettier. And to do that, you just take your fingers and just make a standing pie crust. And if you want, just go all the way around, and it makes a pretty finished edge, and it's easy to do too. Makes for a nice looking edge on the pie. The last thing we need to do is just make some slits into our pie so the air can, or the steam can escape while the pie is cooking. And you can make a pretty design. And the last little touch is to sprinkle a little sugar on top of the pie crust. And then we're just going to take it and bake it. And now we'll just let it cool, and we'll cut a slice. See, I told you it was simple and easy to make. And if you want the printable recipe, look for the link in the description. And you can find a link to the video on how to make the pie crust too in the description also. And if you don't subscribe, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We would love to have you subscribe to our channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.